When ancient meets advanced, Admiral Fixon stood motionless on the command deck of the Stellar Dominance, his forearms clasped behind his elongated torso as he gazed through the massive crystalline viewport. The ship stretched nearly 5 kilometers from bow to stern, its biometallic hull gleaming with the soft blue energy that powered the Korathi Empire's most formidable dreadnought. Around him, his crew of 300 moved with practiced efficiency, their scaled skin shifting between shades of deep purple and silver as they monitored the vast emptiness of space. For 3,000 years, the Korathi had ruled this galaxy with absolute authority. Their technology was unmatched, their military undefeated, and their knowledge of the cosmos complete. Every species they had encountered had either submitted to their rule or been swept aside by their superior capabilities. The galaxy was theirs, mapped and cataloged down to the smallest asteroid, with every intelligent species documented in their vast databases. Commander Zethera approached from the navigation station, her movements fluid despite the heavy ceremonial armor that marked her rank. Her skin displayed the deep crimson patterns that indicated urgent news, something that immediately caught Fixon's attention. In all his centuries of service, he had rarely seen his second-in-command show such visible concern. "Admiral, we have detected an anomaly in sector designation Terra 7, she reported, her voice carrying the formal cadence required in the presence of Fleet Command. Long-range sensors have identified what appears to be a derelict vessel approximately 200,000 kilometers from our current position." Fixon's skin shifted to a pale gold, the Korathi equivalent of raised eyebrows. Sector Terra 7 was part of the Forbidden Zone, a region of space that had been marked as quarantined for over 4 centuries. The area contained a primitive world called Earth, inhabited by a species that had barely achieved interplanetary flight when the Korathi had last surveyed them. The humans, as they called themselves, had been deemed too primitive to warrant conquest and too far from major trade routes to matter. They had been left alone, forgotten in the vast expanse of Korathi territory, a derelict in the Terran sector. Fixon mused, his voice carrying centuries of experience in space exploration. "Most unusual. Our records indicate no advanced civilizations in that region. Perhaps debris from our own vessels." "Unlikely, sir," Zethera replied, activating a holographic display that materialized between them. The 3-dimensional image showed a vessel unlike anything in the Korathi fleet. It was angular where Korathi ships were curved, metallic where theirs were bioorganic, and seemingly primitive in its construction. "The design matches no known configuration in our databases. The vessel appears to be of human origin, but this presents certain inconsistencies." Fixon studied the hologram with growing interest. The ship was roughly 800 meters in length, small by Korathi standards, but its design suggested a sophistication that didn't match their records of human technology. According to their last survey of Earth, conducted 400 years ago, humans had barely developed basic fusion drives and were still struggling with interstellar travel. This vessel, however, showed signs of technology that should have been impossible for such a primitive species. "Chief Science Officer Vextar to the command deck immediately," Fixon ordered, his skin now displaying the bright orange patterns that indicated his full attention was engaged. Within moments, Vextar glided onto the bridge, his aged form moving with the careful precision of someone who had spent decades studying the mysteries of the universe. His skin bore the permanent silver markings of the scientific caste, and his extra pair of arms were fitted with the neural interfaces that connected him directly to the ship's sensor arrays. "Admiral, I have been monitoring the situation from the science bay," Vextar began before being asked. "The readings from this vessel are most perplexing. The hull composition does not match any known materials in our databases, and the energy signatures suggest technology far in advance of what we recorded from the human homeworld." "Explain," Fixon commanded, his tactical mind already working through the implications. Vextar activated his neural interface, and streams of data began flowing across the holographic display. "The vessel's hull appears to be constructed from a titanium-based alloy that incorporates elements we have never encountered. The molecular structure suggests a manufacturing process that exceeds our own capabilities in several key areas. More concerning, however, are the energy readings. The display shifted to show energy distribution patterns throughout the derelict ship. Even powered down, the vessel was emanating energy signatures that rivaled some of their own military systems. The power source appears to be some form of contained fusion reaction, but the efficiency ratings are impossible according to our understanding of physics. The energy output should require a reactor 3 times the size of what our scans indicate is actually aboard the vessel. Fixin felt a chill run through his being, a sensation he had not experienced in centuries of commanding the Empire's forces. The Korethi had achieved their dominance through technological superiority. Their weapons, their defenses, their manufacturing capabilities were all based on the assumption that their science was the most advanced in the galaxy. If humans had somehow developed technology that exceeded their own, it would change everything. Could this be some form of deception? Commander Zethera asked, voicing the question that was forming in all their minds. Perhaps another species attempting to disguise their technology. Negative, Vextar replied, his skin now showing the pale blue patterns that indicated scientific certainty. The construction techniques, the material signatures, even the basic design philosophy all match what we know of human engineering. This is definitely of Terran origin. But it represents a technological advancement that should have taken them at least 1,000 years to achieve. Admiral Fixin moved to the central command platform, his mind racing through the possibilities. Either their intelligence about human development was catastrophically wrong, or something had happened in the Terran sector that had accelerated human progress beyond all reasonable expectations. Helm, set course for the derelict vessel. Maximum stealth protocols, he ordered. Science Division, I want full spectrum analysis of everything within 1,000,000 kilometers of that ship. If there are more vessels in the area, I want to know about them immediately. As the stellar dominance changed course toward the mysterious human vessel, Fixin couldn't shake the feeling that this discovery would alter the balance of power in the galaxy. The Korethi Empire had based its entire strategy on the assumption that they were the apex predators of space. If humans had somehow achieved technological parity, or worse, technological superiority, then every calculation about galactic politics would need to be reconsidered. The journey to the derelict took 6 hours, during which time Vextar's team conducted increasingly detailed scans of the mysterious vessel. With each new reading, the impossibility of what they were seeing became more apparent. The ship's computer systems were using processing architectures that the Korethi had only theorized about. The propulsion system showed evidence of gravitational manipulation techniques that their own scientists had deemed impossible. Even the life support systems demonstrated an understanding of atmospheric processing that exceeded their own methods. Admiral, we are now within visual range, reported the navigation officer, his skin showing the steady green patterns of successful mission completion. The main viewing screen activated, showing the human vessel in stark detail against the backdrop of space. Up close, it was even more impressive than the scans had suggested. The hull was seamless, with no visible joints or construction marks. The surface had a subtle texture that seemed to shift and move in the light, suggesting materials that could adapt to different conditions. Most unsettling of all were the weapon ports, which were clearly visible along the ship's flanks, but designed in configurations that the Korethi didn't recognize. Fascinating, Vextar murmured, his instruments working overtime to analyze every detail. Admiral, I am detecting what appears to be a hibernation system aboard the vessel. The energy signatures suggest that the ship is not actually derelict, but rather in some form of extended sleep mode. Sleep mode? Fixin asked, his skin shifting to the deep red patterns that indicated combat readiness. Are you suggesting the crew is still alive? It's possible, sir. The power distribution patterns are consistent with life support systems operating at minimal levels. If humans have developed advanced hibernation technology, they could potentially survive for centuries in such a state. Commander Zethera stepped forward, her tactical instincts engaging. "Admiral, if the crew is alive and their technology is as advanced as our scans suggest, approaching the vessel could be extremely dangerous. We have no way of knowing their intentions or capabilities." Fixin considered this carefully. The Korathi had achieved their dominance through careful planning and overwhelming force. They had never encountered a species that could match their technological capabilities, let alone exceed them. This situation required a completely different approach. "Maintain safe distance for now," he decided. "Vextar, I want you to compile a complete analysis of everything we've observed. Compare it to our historical records of human development, and try to determine how such advancement could have occurred in such a short time frame." "Yes, Admiral. However, I should mention that our scans have detected something else of interest. The vessel's navigation systems appear to be active at a low level, and they seem to be receiving some form of signal from deeper in the Terran sector." "A signal." Fixin's skin flashed bright yellow, the Korathi equivalent of alarm. "From where?" "Unknown, sir. The signal is using communication protocols we don't recognize, but it appears to be originating from the direction of the human homeworld." "If I may suggest, Admiral, it's possible that this vessel is not alone. There may be others." The implications hit Fixin like a physical blow. If humans had developed one ship with technology that exceeded Korathi capabilities, they might have developed dozens or hundreds or thousands. The species that the Empire had dismissed as primitive and irrelevant might have become the most advanced civilization in the galaxy, while the Korathi weren't paying attention. "All stations, maintain highest alert status," Fixin commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded fleets through dozens of successful campaigns. "I want our weapons systems fully charged and our shields at maximum power. If this situation becomes hostile, we need to be ready." As his crew moved to implement his orders, Fixin stared at the mysterious human vessel floating silently in space. For the first time in his long career, he was facing the unknown, and he wasn't sure whether the Korathi Empire was ready for what they might find. The sleeping giant stirs. The accident happened during what should have been a routine scan. Chief Science Officer Vextar was attempting to penetrate the mysterious vessel's outer hull with a focused sensor beam when the human ship suddenly responded. What had appeared to be a dead derelict for hours suddenly blazed to life, its systems activating in a cascade of energy that sent shockwaves through the Korathi sensors. "Admiral," Vextar called out, his skin flashing the rapid purple patterns that indicated extreme urgency. "The vessel is powering up. All systems are coming online simultaneously. This is not a gradual startup sequence. This is an instantaneous activation that should be impossible." Admiral Fixin watched in fascination and growing concern as the human ship transformed before their eyes. Hull panels that had appeared damaged began realigning themselves, creating seamless surfaces that reflected the light of nearby stars. Weapon ports that had seemed inactive now glowed with internal energy. Most unsettling of all, the ship began to turn, its movements precise and deliberate, as it oriented itself to face the massive Korathi dreadnought. "Shields to maximum power," Fixin ordered, his tactical experience taking over despite the unprecedented nature of the situation. "All weapon systems online, but do not target. We maintain defensive posture unless they show hostile intent." The human vessel completed its turn and hung motionless in space for several long minutes. Then, without warning, a communication signal penetrated their shields and reached the Stellar Dominance's communication array. The signal was using protocols that their computers didn't recognize but somehow managed to interface with their systems anyway. "Incoming transmission," reported Communications Officer Diethran, his skin showing the pale silver patterns of confusion. "The signal is adapting to our communication systems in real time." "Admiral, I've never seen anything like this. Their technology is learning our protocols as we watch." "Put it through," Fixin commanded, standing at full attention as he prepared for humanity's first contact with the Korathi Empire in over 4 centuries. The main viewing screen flickered and then resolved into an image that none of the Korathi had been prepared for. A human face appeared before them, but this was not the primitive being from their historical records. The woman looking back at them had alert, intelligent eyes and bore the unmistakable bearing of someone accustomed to command. She was wearing a uniform that seemed to be made from materials that shifted and adapted like living tissue, and behind her was visible a bridge that made the stellar dominance's command center look antiquated. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Perseverance," the human said, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. "I'm registering unknown vessels in proximity to my ship. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." Admiral Thixon felt his world shift. The confidence in the human's voice, the casual way she had made demands of the most powerful ship in the Korathi fleet, the technology visible behind her, all of it contradicted everything the Empire knew about human capabilities. "I am Admiral Thixon of the Korathi Empire," he replied, drawing on centuries of diplomatic experience to maintain his composure. "We detected your vessel and believed it to be derelict. We meant no harm in our investigation." Captain Chen's expression showed mild surprise, then what appeared to be recognition. "Korathi Empire. Our historical databases indicate first contact with your species approximately 400 years ago. You surveyed Earth during what we call the early expansion period. I'm surprised to encounter you out here. Our records suggested your territory was much closer to the galactic core." "Our territory encompasses most of known space," Thixon replied, though he was beginning to wonder if that statement was still accurate. "May I ask what brings a human vessel to this region? Our last survey of your homeworld suggested that interstellar travel was still in its early stages for your species." Something that might have been amusement flickered across Captain Chen's features. "Admiral, what year is it according to your calendar?" The question seemed odd, but Thixon answered anyway. "It is the 3,847th year of the Korathi expansion." "I see. That would correspond to Earth year 2387 in our calendar." "Admiral, I think there may be some significant gaps in your intelligence about human development. The Perseverance has been in hibernation for the past 400 years, traveling from the Kepler 442 system back toward Earth. We launched when your species last visited our solar system." Vextar stepped forward, his scientific curiosity overriding protocol. "Captain Chen, our scans of your vessel indicate technology that far exceeds what our records show for human capabilities. How is this possible?" Captain Chen's smile widened. "With respect, Science Officer, your records are somewhat out of date. Humanity has experienced what we call the Great Acceleration since your last visit. We've expanded to over 2,000 star systems, developed technologies your survey teams couldn't have imagined, and established the Terran Federation as a major galactic power." The words hit the Korathi bridge like a physical blow. 2,000 star systems. The Korathi Empire, in 3 millennia of expansion, controlled roughly 1,500 systems. If the human was telling the truth, then in just 4 centuries, humanity had built an empire larger than the Korathis. "That's impossible," Commander Zethera interjected, her skin flashing the deep red patterns of disbelief. "No species can achieve such rapid expansion. The logistical requirements alone would be insurmountable." Captain Chen's expression became more serious. "Commander, I understand your skepticism. 400 years ago, we were indeed a young species struggling with basic interstellar flight. But humanity has certain advantages that your initial survey might not have detected. We adapt quickly, we learn from every encounter, and we never give up. When your people cataloged us as primitive and moved on, we took that as a challenge." She gestured to something off-screen, and the view behind her expanded to show more of her ship's bridge. The Korathi crew watched in stunned silence as they saw technology that made their most advanced systems look primitive. Holographic displays that seemed to exist in 3-dimensional space without projectors, control surfaces that responded to thought rather than touch, and in the background, crew members of different species working together with easy familiarity. "You have non-human crew members," Fixin observed, his strategic mind immediately grasping the implications. "Of course. The Terran Federation is a multi-species alliance. We've found that cooperation and mutual respect achieve far more than conquest and subjugation. We have humans, yes, but also Centaurians, vegan colonists, the crystal-based silicates from the Rigel system, and dozens of other species. We all work together toward common goals." Vextar's instruments were working overtime, trying to analyze everything visible on the human bridge. "Captain, I must ask, what type of power source does your vessel use? Our scans indicate energy output that should require massive reactor systems, but your ship appears to be much smaller than such requirements would suggest." "Zero-point energy extraction," Captain Chen replied casually, as if discussing the weather. "We learned to tap the quantum foam about 2 centuries ago. Clean, virtually unlimited power with minimal infrastructure requirements. It's what made our rapid expansion possible." Admiral Fixin felt the foundations of his worldview crumbling. Zero-point energy was theoretical even for Korethi science. They had calculated that such technology was centuries away from practical application. If humans had mastered it 200 years ago, what other impossible advances had they achieved? "Captain Chen," he said carefully, "I must ask what your intentions are in this region of space. The Korethi Empire has maintained peace and order in this galaxy for 3 millennia. We would not want any misunderstandings." The human captain's expression became thoughtful. "Admiral, I think perhaps we need to have a more comprehensive discussion about the current state of galactic politics. You see, the Terran Federation has been aware of the Korethi Empire for quite some time. We've monitored your activities, studied your technology, and assessed your military capabilities. To be honest, we've been wondering when formal contact would be reestablished." Before Fixin could respond, his tactical officer's voice cut through the conversation. "Admiral, I'm detecting multiple energy signatures approaching from the direction of the Terran homeworld. Massive signatures, sir, far larger than anything in our databases." Captain Chen nodded as if she had been expecting this. "That would be the Federation response fleet. When the Perseverance went into hibernation mode after our encounter with your vessel, our automated systems sent a priority signal to Earth. Standard first contact protocols. Admiral, I'm afraid you're about to meet a significant portion of the Terran Space Navy." The main tactical display activated, showing energy signatures that defied belief. Dozens of vessels were approaching, each one larger than the stellar dominance, their energy outputs suggesting weapons and defensive systems that could reduce the Korethi dreadnought to scrap metal within minutes. "Admiral Fixin," Captain Chen continued, her voice taking on a more formal tone, "on behalf of the Terran Federation, I extend an invitation for formal diplomatic contact. We believe it's time for our 2 civilizations to establish proper relations. However, I should mention that the galaxy has changed significantly since your people last surveyed human space. The Federation is now one of the major powers in this region, and we've been working with several other species to establish what we call the Galactic Cooperation Council." "Other species?" Fixin asked, though he was beginning to suspect he didn't want to hear the answer. "Oh yes, the Andorian Republic, the Vegan Collective, the Crystalline Hegemony, and about 40 other civilizations. We've found that cooperation and mutual aid create far more prosperity than conquest and subjugation. In fact, Admiral, the Korethi Empire is one of the few remaining isolationist powers in this part of the galaxy." As the Federation fleet approached, their impossible size and obvious technological superiority becoming more apparent with each passing moment, Admiral Fixin realized that everything he had believed about the Korethi Empire's place in the galaxy was wrong. They weren't the apex predators of space. They were an isolated remnant of an older way of thinking, surrounded by civilizations that had moved far beyond their outdated concepts of power and dominance. The sleeping giant of humanity had awakened, and it had brought friends. Captain Chen, Thixon said finally, his voice carrying the weight of someone whose entire worldview had just shifted. I believe we have much to discuss. Captain Chen smiled, and for the first time since the conversation began, it was a warm, genuinely friendly expression. Admiral, I couldn't agree more. Welcome to the new galaxy.